Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. I went back nearly 20 years to tell you this story. It was the fall, close to Halloween, and I was going on a camping trip with my ex-boyfriend and 3 of his friends. Even though I'd met his friends before, I still felt like it would be awkward to be the only girl with 4 guys for 3 nights. I ended up just going for it and decided to join because they picked a great spot. We'd hang around the fire, grill out, and drink some beers. The place they chose was great. I'm not even exaggerating. There was a waterfall just below one of the trails, so we had drinking water and cleaning water whenever we wanted. We set up our tents near a group of trails that came together so we could hike easily. My boyfriend's friends were funny, polite, and most importantly, gave me privacy when I needed it. No one drank too much the night before, so we were all pretty fresh and ready to hike a few miles the next day. After we finished, we grilled more food and had a few more beers. Right after we wrapped up for the day, before heading into the tents, my boyfriend asked me to put the cooler and the stereo into his pickup truck while he put out the fire and gathered the trash. I did as he asked, then put the truck keys in the front pocket of his backpack. The backpack was placed on the far side of the tent from the door. My ex-boyfriend would sleep closest to the door, and he had his gun for protection in case something crazy happened. We slept great that night. When we looked outside the next morning, it was pure chaos. The campfire was out, but the ring of stones that had been so carefully placed the night before was now scattered everywhere. White ashes covered the ground. The heavy grilling grate was on the ground. The truck was what was really awful. Both doors were wide open. The stereo was ripped out of the dashboard with wires hanging out. The speakers were shattered on the ground. The leather seats were ripped open and the stuffing was coming out. The cooler was tipped over and water made a huge puddle. Raw beef was torn up, splattered all over the hood and windshield. Dark red streaks of blood were running down like someone had painted them on. We tried to figure out what happened and how our campsite got destroyed without anyone hearing anything. A discussion quickly escalated into accusations. My ex-boyfriend accused me of not locking the truck the night before, which made me so angry because I swore to God I locked his damn truck. Then, he went straight to the tent, got his bag, but there were no keys in the front pocket, and it escalated from there. My boyfriend said, "Are you that stupid?" and started demanding that I apologize. I was genuinely so confused. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where you're really losing your mind, but it's not fun. I walked over to my boyfriend's truck and found the keys lying near it. I just kept stammering, unable to form words. My boyfriend got silent, saying he just wanted to leave, and after apologizing to his friends, we threw what was left into the trunk and quickly got out of there. The ride home was so strange. I felt like I was going crazy. I kept apologizing and begging him to believe that I was sure I had locked the truck. He stayed silent for a long time until I started crying, at which point he said things like, "I know, I'm sorry, I believe you." That didn't make me feel better because it still didn't answer the question of what the hell happened. I kept asking my boyfriend what he thought happened because he had more camping experience than I did. He kept repeating that he didn't know. It got pretty tense, and we had to pull into a diner parking lot to take a break and talk it out. We stopped at an original Pancake House restaurant. My boyfriend hesitated, trying to find the words to say. When I urged him, he said that I would think he was crazy if he told me what he was thinking. I reassured him that nothing could be stranger than the feeling I had when I found the missing keys at the campsite. After a moment of silence, he finally started talking. He said he had a strange dream the night before, Not exactly a nightmare, but enough to make him wake up with a jolt. When he woke up, it was completely quiet outside the tent, so he went back to sleep. At the time, he thought it was just because he drank a little too much and was tired from the hike. It wasn't until I panicked about not finding the keys in his bag that he started to pay attention to that dream. I urged him to be clear, and then he started to recount what he saw in his dream. He said he dreamed he woke up in the tent with me lying next to him, but then he realized someone was standing hunched right over him with their feet on either side of his sleeping bag. At first, he was scared, but when he looked closely at the face, it didn't look like a human face, but like it was made of ski mask material. Right after that, he woke up, chuckled to himself, thinking it was just a bad dream, and went back to sleep. We were silent for a moment, and then apologized to each other before getting back on the road. We were both tired, scared, and confused, so the ride home was quiet. I got home, showered, and fell asleep. We had a silent agreement that we would talk later, but when I called him at the end of the day, he just said that he had talked to his friends and that they had decided it was best to just forget about it. I was stunned by what I had just heard. They didn't want to file a police report or contact the park ranger or any authority. My ex-boyfriend said no one could help anyway, so the only way was to try to forget about it. I really couldn't believe it. My ex-boyfriend was super particular about his truck, and he always kept up with the insurance payments. But to file a claim, he'd have to file a police report. He loved that truck, and it was everything to him, so I really thought that the whole insurance claim thing would make him change his mind, but it didn't. I have my own theories as to why, and they all circle around one repeating theme, which is that I think my ex-boyfriend was the one who destroyed the campsite that night. I don't know if you could describe it as a blackout state or something, but I think he did more than just wake up from a bad dream in the middle of the night. He might even remember everything, but I think at the time, the idea of admitting that he had a hazy memory of smashing his own stereo was impossible. That's why he didn't want to revisit that night in any way. He didn't want his friends talking about it, and especially didn't want me talking to them about it. He knew we'd eventually find out the truth. I don't think he really cared about the smashed stereo, but he did care a lot about what his friends thought of him. We broke up less than a year later, and really, the camping incident was a small contributing factor. I'm not sure about all that happened. They are just my theories. As far as I know, my ex-boyfriend never went camping again. My name is Ryan. I'm 28 years old and I live in Ohio. Every fall, my closest friends and I get together for a camping trip. It's been a tradition ever since we met in high school. It's our chance to hang out, build a campfire, grill some food, and just relax after months of hard work. But a few years ago, on a weekend in early November, something terrible happened. It left me with horrible memories and nightmares. I don't think I'll ever be able to get over it, no matter how hard I try, because honestly, most of it was my fault. That year, our camping trip was set for a Saturday. We had been checking the weather all week. It was going to be really cold, but there was no rain in the forecast. This made us careless, and we didn't prepare dry firewood like we usually do. The morning of, it started pouring, and I knew that if I didn't do something, we would have to cancel our get-together. I arrived at the campsite around the middle of the afternoon. I had brought the essentials in my trunk: a tarp, a broken wooden pallet for dry kindling, and a large can of gasoline. I took them out of the car and got to work. It took me a few hours to stack enough wood for a big campfire. Most of the wood was too wet to use. That's where the gas came in. Every so often, I'd pour a little on the wood, letting it soak in as much as possible. My logic was that by the time we lit the fire, the wood would be saturated and hot enough to dry out, making a long-lasting campfire for us to sit around. Just as the sun was starting to go down, I sent a group text to my friends, letting them know that everything was still on and the fire was ready. A little while later, my friends' cars started pulling into the campground. We were so happy to see each other and carried our gear to the campsite. It was still drizzling a little, but we didn't care. As the food was sizzling on the grill, we turned our attention to the big wood pile. At that time, I was still watching over the BBQ area. Two of my friends had walked over to the campfire. They were pouring the last of the gas that I had brought. Another person in our group was handing out beer cans. One of them yelled, "Are you ready, guys? Let's do this." I turned just in time to see someone bend down to throw a burning piece of newspaper onto the woodpile. What followed was a whoosh and a bright flash of fire that made me cover my face. When I took my hands away, it wasn't just the campfire that was on fire. It was Mark. It was truly one of the most horrifying sights I've ever witnessed. A real human torch. He thrashed around wildly, his agonizing screams of pain echoing across the field. Everything happened in a flash of chaos. The fire didn't just flare up on the woodpile, it spread to his clothes very quickly. The smell of gasoline and burning filled the air. He struggled, his hair and shirt on fire, his screams piercing the air. A person in our group rolled him on the wet grass, trying to put out the flames with grass and a jacket. Others ran around looking for water, blankets, anything to smother the fire. My first instinct was to call 911 and yell for everyone to help. Communication was slow because we were so far out. I remember every minute like an endless loop, water splashing, screams, smoke curling, someone whispering, "Are you okay?" But no one answered. A friend tried to put cold water on his skin. We tried to cover the burns with clean cloth. I kept calling his name. With every passing minute, the fear grew. Police and ambulances rushed in, their sirens blaring. The paramedics jumped out and immediately wrapped bandages around the burned areas to prevent infection. They used a cold spray to soothe the wounds while placing a tarp over him to keep him warm and prevent shock. One person held an oxygen tube near him, measuring his blood pressure and speaking softly to him, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. That night, we split up. A few of us stayed at the scene to coordinate with the police. The rest drove to the hospital to follow the ambulance. I was one of those who stayed behind. An officer asked me a lot of questions. I tried to answer, but my voice was hoarse, and tears were streaming down my face. The next day, when I got the news that he was alive and in the ICU for severe burns, part of me felt relieved, but another part still felt shattered. I went to the hospital and saw him lying quietly, wrapped in white bandages, a ventilator gently humming next to him. The air in the room was heavy. The doctors told us he would have to undergo skin grafts and a long recovery. They also asked about the circumstances of the incident to prepare for his psychological treatment. I'll never forget the moment I saw him lying there and told myself that I would have to live with the consequences of that day. The nights that followed, I would wake up screaming from my dreams. The image of the fire was still stuck in my mind. Every time I see a gas can, smell burning, or see a campfire, my heart aches. He went through a series of skin grafts for almost 2 years after the accident. According to what the police announced after the investigation, it wasn't too much gas that caused the fire explosion. It was the gas vapor that had been concentrated in the core of the campfire. When a flame was introduced, it acted like a fuel bomb. The heat and pressure of the expanding gas vapor engulfed anyone standing close enough. Unfortunately for him, the waterproof clothes he was wearing were old and not fire-resistant. He says it wasn't anyone's fault and even blames himself for standing too close to the campfire. But I know for a fact that it was my fault, no matter how hard he tries to reassure me. I can't forget that terrible memory, and it has caused some of the worst depression. I could barely leave the house during that time. Seeing a campfire, hearing fireworks, or even smelling burning wood would bring back the most vivid memories of that night. Even the act of burning wood makes me tremble. My story is a warning. Please be careful with campfires or any other fire, because what's supposed to be a little fun can turn into a nightmare that haunts you for the rest of your life.
I'm Erica, 18 years old, living in Ohio with my parents and a younger brother. I am really glued to my phone. I can spend hours, even whole days browsing the web. 2 or 3 a.m. is usually when I go to bed every day. And the posture will always be me holding the phone and dozing off. I feel like there's too little time to use my phone during the day. Whenever possible, the only thing I do is sit or lie down and hold my phone. I rarely share my thoughts and difficulties with my parents. Sharing it via text with friends or strangers on social media is easier for me. One day, after having dinner with my parents, I went to my room to do some things and grabbed my phone. I had no one to talk to. I updated a status on my Instagram account. I'm really bored and want someone to talk to. At exactly 3 a.m., when I was about to go to sleep, I received a message from an unknown Instagram account. "You're not sleeping, huh?" I was quite surprised, staring at the message for a few seconds. But thinking about the status I had updated, I thought someone else might be lonely like me. The typing indicator appeared. A few seconds later, another message made me shiver. "Do you know? Demons appear at 3 a.m., accompanied by a red demon face." I felt uncomfortable and immediately blocked that account, wondering who the crazy person was. I continued browsing the web. About 5 minutes later, a message was sent from another strange account. "I will devour you if you dare to do that again." My heart started beating faster. "Don't be scared. I'm just kidding. I'll always be by your side. I'm seeing you very clearly. I can smell your perfume. I really like it." I jumped up reading those creepy messages. Observing around the room, I looked closely at every object, every nook and cranny. I felt scared of the very familiar things I use daily. The sound of a message being sent startled me. "Are you curious to know who I am?" Immediately after, a grotesque picture was sent, and I was so frightened that I dropped the phone on the bed. It took a few seconds to calm down. I went online to search for information about the picture. The Wendigo, a malevolent spirit in Algonquian culture. It's often described as a tall, skinny creature with long, sharp claws. The Wendigo is said to have the ability to transform into a human and eat people. I read every word, and goosebumps covered my body. Something super surprising is going to happen to you. Wait and see. My heart felt like it was being squeezed, beating twice as fast. I looked around. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't good at all. The sound of a message echoed. I hastily picked up the phone. It was a picture in which Thomas, my boyfriend, was dead hanging. I screamed as loudly as I could, trying to release all the fear within me. "Surprised, aren't you?" I quickly jumped out of bed and rushed towards the door of the room, desperate to call out loudly for my parents' help. Just as my hand reached for the doorknob, the sound of a message echoed again. "I'm behind the door waiting for you. Open the door. Let me taste your blood." My legs went weak, and I collapsed to the floor. I tried to breathe steadily to calm myself down. I dialed my mother's phone, but it couldn't connect. I called my dad, my younger brother, my best friend, but all in vain. I was so scared that I felt like crying. I was trapped in my own room with a flesh-eating demon. The unbelievable and absurd was happening to me. "Don't cry. I'm right next to you." The sound of the message echoed again, and I trembled as I held the phone. Another photo was sent. It was my parents' bedroom, with them lying on the bed asleep. But the figure holding the camera that captured them was eerie, tall and gaunt. Next was a photo of my little brother sleeping. The photographer was so close, yet faceless. In the corner of the image, sharp claws were visible. It felt like I was going mad. I was being tormented and controlled by that demon. Panic, fear, helplessness, everything compressed in my chest as if it were about to explode. The next photo was sent, and it was me, precisely at this moment. I was screaming in agony and despair. Looking around the room, I wanted to find that demon. I shouted angrily and challenged. I wouldn't let that demon control me anymore. A horrifying laughter echoed, and the room was still empty except for me. I searched the room, destroying everything within reach, peering into the smallest corners. Finally, I looked under the bed. There it was, holding the phone with a sinister smile on the face identical to mine, mouth full of sharp teeth. I am right next to you. We are one and together. We are residing within one.
I'm Leon, 30, and I live with my wife in Washington. It's been exactly 10 years since I lost my best friend on March 13th, 2014. He was the one who had accompanied me since my childhood. His sudden disappearance shocked everyone. I can still clearly picture his mom's pained and haggard face. The search spread across Washington state and the neighboring states, and it went on for a year. Eventually, the police had to call off the search because nothing turned up. Every year on this day for the past 10 years, I think about him and go through the photos we took together. Today was no different. I remembered his social media account and checked it out. I was moved when I realized he was stuck at 20, while I've grown into an adult. When I checked the messages, the last one he sent me was also on this day, 10 years ago, and I never replied. As I scrolled through our conversation, I was shocked to see how much he had to say. He used to say those things to me all the time, but I just ignored them. Maybe I was just too careless back then. February 25th, 2014, 12 a.m. Leon, you must be asleep, but I can't sleep because that evil spirit is watching me. February 25th, 2014, 3 a.m. Do you believe in heaven, Leon? I've always wondered if there's really a heaven for good people and a hell for evil ones. I read his thoughts too late. I did reply to the message, but it was pretty superficial and perfunctory. The more I read the messages, the guiltier I felt toward the friend I always saw as my soulmate. February 13th, 2014, 12 a.m. Leon, this is my blog. There are many things I can't tell you directly or text you. I ignored the link he sent. Why? I clicked on the link and it led to a private blog. There aren't many posts, and they were all published in a short period of time. February 2nd, 2014. I think I'm the only one who knows this, Leon. I was sitting by the window in my room and noticed a small space in Mr. Joseph's house. Do you remember him? The neighbor was really friendly and lovable. But no, that was just a perfect mask for an evil person. I saw him torturing his wife, Leon. February 7th, 2014. Cassie. It looks like she was murdered by her own husband. I heard her pleading in a very pitiful way, and then a sound of an impact. Nothing too loud, but clear enough for me to hear. And after about 20 minutes, I didn't hear Mrs. Cassie's voice anymore. Leon, it looks like I was discovered. That nice neighbor noticed me. I remember that year, Cassie went missing, and the police found her in the basement, having committed suicide. I remember that after Cassie's case, he started showing signs of fear and spoke less. He was usually very quiet, so no one noticed anything unusual about him. A week later, he didn't come to class. I texted him, and he said he wasn't feeling well because of insomnia. That was the only message where I showed concern for him. I kept reading his blog after that. February 20th, 2014. What should I do, Leon? My nerves are about to explode. I'm too scared to sleep, leave the room, or even take my eyes off the window. I'm afraid that the devil might come after me at any time. But I can't tell anyone about this. The devil's eyes are really scary. Help me, Leon. March 13th, 2014. I don't think I'll be able to escape the devil, Leon.
I feel like I'll end up like Mrs. Cassie, in a dark place where no one knows. I burst into tears when I read these last lines. The last post on the blog was also the day he went missing. Unlike Mrs. Cassie's, his disappearance turned into a mystery that's still unsolved. But today, after 10 years, I've uncovered this terrifying secret. I cried a lot, feeling incredibly regretful for having missed so much. Once I calmed down, I called the police and gave them all the evidence. His mother fainted when she heard the story. I know she's been holding on to hope for the past 10 years. A mother's strong belief that her son is still alive and will come back. But the miracle didn't happen. The police found a skeleton in the basement of Mr. Joseph's house, lying curled up with signs of decay. The clothes were familiar, so it was definitely him. But we need to wait for the forensic exam results. After 3 days, everything was clear. He was killed by Mr. Joseph at night and hidden in that basement for the past 10 years. He renovated the house, sealing off the basement completely so it wasn't used anymore. Everyone assumed it was because he was too sad about his wife's passing, but in reality, it was a way to hide his cruelty and heartlessness. He got life in prison without parole. My friend's family had to face bad news twice, and now they have no hope left. They moved away to escape the pain. I'll never forget my friend.
I am Marie, 28 years old, and I have been living alone in the city of Fresno for nearly 8 years. I never thought that working at the bakery counter in a Walmart supermarket could turn into a lifelong obsession. I had been working here for over 3 years, starting every day early in the morning when the store was still quiet. It was a routine job with flour, ovens, the delicious smell of fresh bread, and brief conversations with coworkers. Everything changed the day Gim Arcour disappeared. Jim was a young girl. She was beautiful, quick-witted, always volunteered for the night shift, and was ready to work extra hours at any time. No one at the bakery worked harder than Jim. She once said she needed money to help her family, that she couldn't afford to fail. She was always on time, never missed a day without notice. And yet one morning, she didn't show up for her shift. At first, everyone thought maybe Jim was sick or had an urgent matter to deal with. But when the manager called and no one answered, a strange feeling began to creep in. I remember last week she seemed more stressed than usual. When we were cleaning up after our shift, Jim confided in me about a problem that had been worrying her. "Marie," she whispered, still wiping down the oven, "I think someone is trying to hurt me." I stopped mid-action and looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I am not sure," Jim sighed. "But Brad always looks at me with these strange eyes. Last week I found my locker had been broken into, and yesterday I saw him hanging around, even though it wasn't his shift." Brad was the night shift manager, a middle-aged man who was quiet with a cold stare. He had only started working here a few months ago. I nervously told Jim to report it to the manager. Jim shook her head helplessly since Brad was the manager, and she had no concrete evidence. I placed my hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "If there's anything that makes you feel unsafe, tell me, okay?" Jim smiled weakly and nodded. "Thanks. Maybe I'm just overthinking." Nearly a week after the incident, no one knew where Gim had gone. Her family had no news either. The police were called in. They questioned all the staff, searched for information, but there were no traces to be found. A few days after Gim's disappearance, life seemed to go back to normal, or at least people tried to make themselves believe that. I still went to work every day, still spread dough on trays, still heard the oven crackling as if nothing had happened. Everything became eerily silent, as if no one dared to mention Gim's name. We kept working, but the worry lingered in every glance. I couldn't help but notice that Brad seemed unnervingly calm after Jim disappeared. While all of us were tense and worried, he remained composed, as if nothing had happened. Sometimes I even caught him smiling to himself while checking the oven, the one Jim used to handle. Then, that morning, the first nightmare began. A middle-aged woman stormed up to the bakery counter, her face flushed with anger. She slammed a bag of bread onto the counter, her voice sharp with frustration. "Do you know what's in here?" I slowly looked down at the bag of bread. On the outside, it looked like any other baguette, golden brown, still giving off that familiar, fragrant baked smell. But when the woman tore open the bread, inside was a dark patch, and before I could process it, the customer pulled out a long brown hair. I heard murmurs from the people around us. The noise rose, as if a crowd was about to burst into chaos. The manager quickly rushed over, forcing a tight smile in an attempt to calm the customer. He hurriedly tried to come up with an explanation. "Sorry, ma'am, this is definitely an accident. We'll check the baking process to make sure this doesn't happen again." I just stood there trembling, my mind spinning with one thought. The hair, it looked so much like Jim's. That evening, I sat curled up on the old couch, a thin blanket draped over my shoulders. The TV buzzed in the quiet room, filling the emptiness of a lonely night after a long shift. I held a cup of water, taking small sips to ease the fatigue building in my body. Today had been long. I tried to push aside the swirling thoughts about Jim, the hair and the bread, the strange feelings that had been haunting me these past few days. But then, a news headline jolted me back to reality. Fresno police are investigating a horrifying incident. A customer at Walmart discovered a human finger in a loaf of bread purchased from the store's bakery. The cup in my hand slipped, the glass hitting the floor with a crash, the water spilling onto the carpet. My whole body froze, my eyes glued to the TV screen. Currently, DNA tests are underway to identify the victim. I gasped, my cold hands gripping the arm of the chair. The finger, it couldn't be. A wave of disgust surged from deep within me, making me want to vomit. I tried to find a reasonable explanation. Could it have been an accident? A sick joke from someone? An unusual mishap in production? But no scenario made sense. Because I had touched those loaves, I had packaged them with these hands. I had placed them on the shelf to sell, neatly, cleanly, at a ridiculously low price. And now, a part of someone's body had been in it. A piece of someone had been crushed, mixed into the dough, baked golden in the industrial oven, and then wrapped up in a clean plastic bag. Guilt welled up in my chest, choking me. Was I an accomplice? I had touched it. I had placed it on the shelf, unknowingly inviting customers to buy that disgusting thing. I tossed and turned in bed, rolling from side to side, unable to shake the horrific images from my head. The finger in the bread, the hair tangled in the soft filling, the oven that had been running all night. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me into darkness, but it wasn't peace. I found myself standing in the Walmart bakery. Everything was unnervingly silent. There were no machines running, no workers chatting, no bread puffing up in the oven. No more buttery smells, no more warmth from the fresh-baked trays. I slowly walked forward, each step echoing in the empty space. The silence felt unnatural, as if the whole world had stopped. Then, my gaze stopped at the industrial oven. I didn't understand why I felt scared, but an uneasy feeling began to spread through my body. Suddenly, something started to ooze from the oven's door. A thick, dark liquid slowly dripped down onto the white-tiled floor, creating long, winding streaks. I stared at it, trying to reassure myself that it was just strawberry jam, that maybe someone had spilled an ingredient. But then the foul, metallic smell hit me. I gasped for air, feeling my body freeze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I wanted to look away, to run, but some invisible force kept me rooted to the spot. The oven door slowly opened. Inside, amid the charred metal and ash, was Jim. Her body was burned, with patches of skin peeling away to reveal the charred flesh beneath. Her hair was no longer soft, only scorched clumps sticking to her distorted face. Her eyes were wide open, staring straight at me. Her mouth hung open, as if trying to scream. I stepped back, but she began to move. Jim lifted her arm, blackened and ulcerated, pointing directly at me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. Then her voice echoed, not through sound, but through a whisper that reverberated in my mind. "I'm still here." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, my breath rapid as if I had been submerged underwater. I woke up with dark circles under my eyes and my body exhausted after almost no sleep. My stomach twisted as I remembered the horrific nightmare. Jim in the oven, her burned body, her eyes staring at me. But I reassured myself that it was just a dream. A crazy dream brought on by my mind, haunted by Jim's disappearance and the terrifying news last night. I didn't even dare to check my phone or turn on the TV. I didn't want to hear any more news. When I entered Walmart, the atmosphere was eerily strange. People were gathered in small groups, whispering to each other, their faces all marked with a sense of shock. My heart pounded heavily, each beat hard to breathe with. A bad feeling crept into my cells. Then, I heard a sentence that made my whole world crumble. "The police have confirmed. It's Jim." My legs felt weak. I leaned against the bakery counter to steady myself, but the dizziness in my head didn't fade. The finger in the bread, it was Jim's. The air in the supermarket seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe. Everything in the bakery, trays, flour, freshly baked loaves, all twisted in my eyes. The industrial oven was dismantled shortly after. Walmart closed for several weeks for the investigation. But no one knew the true story. A part of me wanted to believe it was just a terrible mistake, that no one could be cruel enough to do something like that. But the rest of me couldn't believe it. I no longer work at Walmart. Every time I step into a supermarket, every time I see a fresh loaf of bread, I hear Jim. Not a nightmare, not a hallucination, but a haunting whisper that echoes from the deepest parts of my mind. I'm still here. Almost a year has passed since that horrific day. I moved to another city, started a new job at a small bakery, trying to rebuild my life. But the memories of Jim, of Walmart, of those horrifying loaves of bread, still cling to me. I can't stop thinking about Brad, the man with the cold eyes and strange behavior. After the incident, he disappeared too. The police questioned all the staff, including Brad, but there was not enough evidence to charge anyone. But I know. Deep down, I know something is wrong with Brad. Jim's warning about him following her, the strange look when the hair was found in the bread, and his sudden disappearance after the incident, everything is just too coincidental. Was Jim's case really an accident, or was it a crime too cleverly concealed? I'm Naomi, 15 years old. That evening was a Saturday night. My parents were out at a friend's birthday party and wouldn't be back until late. I was sitting on the sofa in the living room, watching a comedy. Abby, our 7-year-old dog, was curled up beside my feet. Everything was peaceful until 9 o'clock. I heard a noise from outside. Abby heard it too and lifted her head. I muted the TV and listened. It was just the sound of the wind blowing through the branches of the maple tree outside. I was about to turn the sound back on when Abby suddenly jumped up. Her ears stood up and she stared toward the front door. I turned off the TV completely and everything went silent. The sound of slow footsteps came clearly through the stillness. Someone was walking from the driveway, across the front yard, then toward the side of the house. I stood up, my legs shaking. Looking through the living room window, I saw the front yard lit up by the lights. There was no one out there, but the footsteps continued, now coming from the back of the house. Abby walked toward the front door, her fur standing on end. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Maybe it's just a neighbor walking their dog. But why would he walk into my yard? The footsteps stopped somewhere behind the house. I waited, counting my heartbeat. A moment later, I heard the sound of metal clinking. Abby started growling. It definitely wasn't the neighbor, like I had thought. Abby never reacts like this to familiar people. I quietly moved to the kitchen, where there was a small window above the sink facing the backyard. Everything was dark. The sound of metal came again. This time it was clearer. Someone was messing with the back door lock. I moved closer to the wall and slowly peered through the corner of the window. The motion sensor light in the backyard suddenly turned on, bright as day. I saw the back of a tall man in a black coat, wearing a knitted hat covering his face. He was holding a long metal bar, trying to pry open the back door lock. I froze, stunned. He was a burglar, or worse. I backed away, leaning against the refrigerator. My hands were trembling. I needed to call 911 right away, but I couldn't find my phone. I put my hands on my head, trying to remember where I had left it. The sound of metal scraping against the lock continued. He seemed to be getting impatient. Abby ran into the kitchen, looking up at me, still growling toward the back door. I hugged Abby's neck, whispering, "Shh, Abby, don't make a sound." But Abby wouldn't listen, her growling getting louder. The scraping noise immediately stopped. I held my breath. He knew someone was inside. A few seconds passed, and I heard heavy footsteps on the wooden stairs at the back of the house. He was walking down to the backyard, leaving the back door, but I knew he wasn't leaving. The footsteps moved from the backyard to the side of the house. He was walking around checking other entrances. I heard him try pushing against the window frame. It was locked, but he was still trying. Then he moved to the living room window. Abby barked sharply. I rushed to cover her mouth, but it was too late. The footsteps stopped at the living room window. I imagined he was standing out there, staring through the glass, knowing for sure someone was home. My heart pounded harder and harder. I had to do something. Then suddenly, I remembered my dad's gun. He keeps it in the closet in their bedroom. The footsteps started again. Now he was in front of the house. I didn't have much time to hesitate. I picked up Abby and ran down the hall to my parents' bedroom and opened the closet. I felt a little safer. My dad's old shoebox was at the bottom of the closet. I opened it. Inside was a small handgun next to a box of bullets. I picked it up and checked the magazine like I had seen my dad do. 6 rounds, all there. I took the safety off, my hands still shaking. Abby was standing by the door, looking toward the stairs with her ears perked up. The scraping from the basement started again. The basement door was old, and the lock wasn't very secure. If he kept at it, he could open it. Abby ran toward the basement stairs, barking loudly. Her barking echoed through the house like an alarm system. The scraping from the basement grew louder. I looked at the gun in my hand. If he came in, if he meant to hurt me, would I be able to pull the trigger? The scraping stopped. Abby stopped barking but was still growling. I listened. There were no footsteps from the basement. He hadn't entered the house. Instead, I heard heavy footsteps moving outside, climbing the concrete steps leading from the basement door to the yard. He had given up. I collapsed onto the bedroom floor, leaning against the bed. Abby ran up to me, licking my face. I held her tightly, feeling her warmth. Now, I needed to call the police. The phone had to be somewhere under the living room couch. I ran downstairs and found it in the corner of the sofa. But before I pressed the call button, I heard a car engine from far away. The headlights shone through the living room window. The car was turning into our driveway. My parents were home. I still didn't dare open the door to run outside. I just stood still, listening. But Abby had noticed, her tail wagging furiously. My parents stepped into the house through the garage door, talking about the party. "Sarah, are you asleep?" my mom called. I ran to them, still holding the gun in my hand. When my parents saw me like that, their smiles immediately disappeared. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" my dad asked, quickly taking the gun from my hand. I told them everything, my voice shaking. My dad turned on the back porch light and grabbed a flashlight to check around the house. We called the police. 2 officers arrived, took my statement, and checked the house. The basement door and the back door showed signs of tampering. It was likely that someone was testing out which house was easy to break into. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with Abby curled up next to me, listening to every sound outside. The next morning, I went down to the kitchen and overheard a conversation between Uncle Peter and my dad on the phone. "Jack, I stopped by your place last night, but no one answered the door." My dad was silent for a while. "Did you do anything there, Peter?" "Well, I just wanted to leave a thank you card and a gift card for Sarah. She helped me with my presentation last week and I just got promoted." "Did you try any of the doors?" "No, I just left the card and left." My dad and I looked at each other in silence. So the first footsteps were from Uncle Pete, and the one who tried to pry open the lock and walk around my house came later. I shuddered as I realized, if Uncle Pete hadn't come first, I might not have been alert in time. It's chilling to think about.
Nathan's Diary, April 27th, 2023. I've just returned home after nearly a month of treatment at the hospital. On this exact day a month ago, a terrifying event occurred at school. To this day, I still feel pain, and my ears ring from the terrifying gunshots that day. It was an ordinary day, and I arrived at school feeling quite anxious because I was about to receive my math test results. I couldn't do the test. I didn't understand anything when I read those dreadful equations. "I wish today wouldn't come, Rachel. I'll definitely get my allowance for the whole week cut by my mom," I complained to my best friend sitting next to me. In contrast to me, Rachel was an outstanding student, especially in mathematics. Our houses are on the same street, so we usually go to school together. It might be a bit rushed, considering we're both only 9 years old, but I really like Rachel. As expected, I got an F on my test, while Rachel scored an A+. I tugged at my hair forcefully. "I'm definitely doomed." Rachel turned to look at me and smiled helplessly. "I'm actually really happy." The homeroom teacher asked those who received low scores to get their parents' signatures on the test and submit it back by tomorrow morning. "Is there anything worse than this for a 9-year-old student?" I muttered. "Rachel, can we not go home today? Or can I sleep over at your place?" "Stop talking nonsense, Nathan," Rachel said, slightly annoyed. Suddenly, we all startled and looked at each other because the noise was so loud. A few students approached the window to look down with curiosity and excitement, while others wanted to run out of the classroom to see where the noise was coming from. "Everyone return to your seats immediately," our homeroom teacher ordered us. I looked at Rachel, who seemed very tense. "What's wrong?" I asked her. "Nathan, I'm sure that was the sound of gunshots." "Gunshots!" Chris, the chubby guy sitting behind us, exclaimed loudly after overhearing the conversation. The whole class was in an uproar, while our homeroom teacher kept urging us to stay quiet. She made a few phone calls, then broke down in tears and rushed to lock the classroom door. We all fell into confusion, silently turning our gazes toward her. After a few minutes, our homeroom teacher looked at us with red eyes, took a deep breath and announced, "Dear students, we have a small incident, nothing major, so I need your cooperation. First, absolute silence. Then, very quietly, take cover under your desks at each of your seats until further instructions. We can all do this, right? Our homeroom teacher raised her hand to her mouth to signal for silence. We nodded in understanding and then began following her instructions. None of us were given exact details about the situation, but we all knew that the fact the homeroom teacher had instructed the entire class to stay in their seats and remain silent was a very serious matter. Rachel couldn't stop crying, and her distress made those around her even more frightened. I held Rachel's hand tightly, but it didn't seem to help. "Rachel, can you come up here with me?" Her voice was gentle. As soon as Rachel stood up, a series of loud explosions rang out. The lock and window of the door shattered, and a powerful force pushed the door open. Chaos quickly ensued, with screams, cries, and the deafening sound of gunfire shaking the room. The homeroom teacher rushed over and hugged Rachel tightly. In the blink of an eye, both of them were covered in numerous holes from the gunfire. The homeroom teacher and Rachel fell right in front of me. My entire body froze. That image, their faces, I will never be able to forget. The gunshots stopped, leaving only the cries and moans of the other students. As for me, I sat there, staring at the homeroom teacher and Rachel with wide, empty eyes, my mouth agape. A little while later, 2 police officers arrived. We were asked to hold hands and walk out of the classroom in a single file, maintaining complete silence. I didn't follow the instructions. I couldn't control my body at that moment. One of the police officers came over and carried me away. I was hospitalized right after that, and it took about a week before I was able to communicate again. "Mom, are Rachel and the teacher okay?" That was the question I asked every day for a month in the hospital, but my mom never answered. After being discharged from the hospital, I told my parents I wanted to go to Rachel's house, but they took me to the local cemetery instead. Here, there was Rachel, my homeroom teacher, the chubby guy Chris, the class president Charity, Miss Dana, and even the principal. The story above is based on a true event that occurred on the morning of March 27th, 2023. A shooting occurred at Covenant School, a private elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee. At least 6 people were killed in the incident, including 3 9-year-old students, 2 teachers, and even the school principal. The suspect was a 28-year-old individual who identified as male but was biologically female, Aiden Hale, an ex-student of the school. He was neutralized by the police at the scene. The perpetrator used 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun to carry out the attack, following a meticulously planned strategy. The police reported that the perpetrator had no prior criminal record, and the 2 rifles he used were legally obtained. Additionally, he was undergoing mental health treatment at the time of the incident. Outrage and deep sorrow were left within the community, especially in the U.S., where school shootings occur relatively frequently.
I'm Merlin, 27 years old, living in New Jersey. I always stop to fill up at the gas station, even when the tank's only half full. This comes from a bad habit I used to have. I didn't used to care about the gas level. Even when the gas gauge was on empty, I'd still stupidly think I could squeeze out a few more miles. That bad habit almost cost me big time, maybe even my life. That day I had a late class, and after school, I grabbed some fast food for a quick dinner before heading home. I took the freeway to save time, even though it was pretty empty that late at night, and it was already past 10. Right before I got on the freeway, I saw a gas station and glanced at my car's gas gauge. I muttered to myself, I can make it another round, feeling way too confident, even though the fuel needle was barely above empty. With my stubborn pride, I gripped the steering wheel tighter, hit the gas, and headed straight for the highway. The highway that cut through the edge of the forest that night had this creepy vibe, like something straight out of a horror movie. The darkness covered everything, with only the car's headlights lighting up small bits of the world around me. On both sides of the road, tall trees were packed close together, their branches reaching out like skinny arms, almost like they were trying to pull someone lost deep into the forest. There were times when the wind would suddenly stop and everything went completely silent. For a second, it felt like all sound just vanished, and it was like something was watching and waiting, leaving this heavy, empty feeling. Out of nowhere, the low fuel warning light kept flashing. I was pretty confused when everything was way more than I expected. In that moment, I kept driving, trying to decide whether to head home or get off the highway to find a gas station. Finally, I could feel the car slowing down, and I started freaking out. But it was too late. As soon as I got off the highway, the car died right on the road next to the dark forest, and it gave me the chills. The bad luck didn't end there. At this spot, my phone had no signal whatsoever. I was freaking out, not knowing what to do in that situation. Everything was totally out of control for someone like me, who usually just went with the flow and had always gotten lucky. I turned on the hazard lights, kept trying to restart the car and dialing my phone, but the more I did it, the more helpless I felt. Finally, when I gave up and decided to just sleep in the car until dawn, then I could clearly hear the car engine. Then the headlights came on, and I excitedly jumped out of the car to look for help. A Ford F-150 pulled over, the window rolled down, and a tall guy with a big bushy beard and some seriously thick sunglasses looked at me. I quickly greeted him, explained my situation, and asked if he could help. The guy sounded out of breath, like he'd just been working pretty hard. He took a few seconds to catch his breath, then looked at me and gave a little smile. I was confused. Couldn't really tell what his eyes looked like through those sunglasses. The guy said he'd take me to get gas at the nearest station and come right back. I kept thanking him, felt grateful, and made sure to lock the car real good before heading out. As soon as I got in the car, I noticed this weird smell. It wasn't exactly bad, but it definitely made me feel uncomfortable. The guy asked why I was out so late, and I just told him I was heading home from school. I asked the guy how far the gas station was, and he smiled, saying just a few minutes. The silence in the car felt heavy, and the guy's smile made me feel somehow suffocated and uneasy. The weird smell from before was getting stronger and stronger. I knew I was getting help, so I didn't want to complain. I just tried to hold my breath and stay as still as possible. I jumped instinctively, looking at the trunk, and then that sound happened again. My mind started racing, going through a million different scenarios. It could have been stuff bumping around in the trunk, but that sound, it was steady, like a heartbeat, or maybe a distress signal. The driver smirked, his crooked smile showing in the dim light from the car's dashboard. It's probably just some little things, don't worry about it. But the way he acted so chill just made me feel even more uneasy. My mind started racing with the worst possible thoughts. Someone tied up in the trunk, a kidnapping, or worse, a victim about to be sold off. The knocking happened again. This time, the sound didn't stop. It kept going like an urgent cry for help. I knew for sure someone was behind me. My mind was screaming, "Do something! Hurry before it's too late!" But my body was frozen, eyes locked on the car door next to me, praying I could just jump out anytime. The knocking on the trunk happened again, like a reminder that in this darkness, I wasn't the only one freaking out. Between two dangers, I totally picked the one with a chance to escape. No time to think. I just yanked the car door open and bolted, curling up, hoping to avoid getting hurt as much as possible. In that split second, I felt the sharp pain like an electric shock shooting through my shoulder, down my right arm. The roar of the car speeding by was just a distant noise in my head. A small groan slipped out, but I bit my lip, trying not to make any more noise. I did my best to get up, then dragged myself toward the bushes by the side of the road. Every move felt like a knife digging into my shoulder, the pain blurring my vision. I felt like I was reborn when I saw the light from a little restaurant up ahead. They helped me call the police and an ambulance. I gave as many details as I could about where my car was and what the guy looked like before I started dealing with my busted shoulder. 2 days later, I was feeling way better. So the first thing I did was call the police to ask about the investigation. The police were still looking for the guy, and I just hoped the person he kidnapped would come back safe. I'm Oscar, and the creepy stuff I went through was like 15 years back. Back then, unlike most guys my age, I was pretty shy and kept to myself. When I was a kid, I didn't hang around or anything, just stayed home, watched TV, and read stories. When I got older, like in high school, I was still pretty quiet. I didn't cause trouble, but I wasn't killing it in school or great at any subject either. Back then, my buddies were all flexing with their girlfriends, while I was just showing off the skills I leveled up in my game. There wasn't much to say since everyone was into their own stuff. But I was the only one up front, so those group hangouts made me feel totally out of place. I got self-conscious about how I talked, especially if I was talking to a girl. There were a couple of girls in school who'd come up to me, but after like 3 sentences, they'd bounce. I only felt confident in my skills when I was gaming, so I started spending more and more time on it. And then, I met my first crush in the game. Her name was Casey, or at least, that's what I figured from her game tag. Funny enough, both Casey and I lived in New York. After a few times of being on the same team, I noticed Casey, but I wasn't really looking to get to know her. Then, out of nowhere, she hit me up first. Casey's way of talking was pretty hilarious, had me laughing all the time. I figured she was around my age, just a guess though. Didn't want to ask anything too personal. We talked a lot about our shared love for gaming, and slowly started chatting about life and feelings too. Talking to Casey made my heart feel tired, because it just wouldn't stop racing. Every day, I couldn't wait for game time, and seeing Casey's name online would have me grinning like an idiot. After we'd been chatting for like 2 weeks, Casey just suddenly dropped that she liked me, and I sat there staring at her messages for like 10 minutes, totally shocked. So, I had a girlfriend and was all proud, showing her off to my friends. They were doubting it and told me to bring Casey to the next hangout. Before I could even bring it up to Casey, she was the one who suggested we meet. Casey's always like that. Her being so upfront and taking the lead totally surprised and made me happy. Casey wanted to hang at my place, just the two of us, and only in the evening when no one else was around. I said yes to Casey, but I was low-key stressing about how to tell my parents and brother. But fate really hooked me up and made it easy to meet my first love. My parents said they were going to a party at a friend's place, and my brother and his crew were heading out for the night. I was hyped and texted Casey, and we set a time to meet up. To be all suave, I offered to pick Casey up, but she turned me down and told me to just wait at home for a surprise. I sent Casey my address and got everything ready for our first date. I cleaned up my room, threw on a nice suit, and secretly used my brother's hair wax and cologne. My phone buzzed with a message, and I grabbed it quick to check out Casey's profile pic. "I'm outside your house." My heart started racing. My hands and feet were sweating. and I was so freaked out I totally forgot to open the door. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and no one was there. I stood there for a minute, ran to the gate to check around, then ran back inside to grab my phone and text Casey again. She said she messed up the address and would be over in a sec. I ran to the bathroom, fixed myself up, then plopped down in the living room to wait. I couldn't sit still, kept wringing my shirt, and then the door knocked again. This time, I rushed over like crazy and threw open the door. What I saw made me freeze. A fat guy with messy clothes and hair was just standing there grinning at me. "You need help?" I said, all confused. "Hey, Oscar, it's Casey." The guy grinned big, eyes wide open. I froze when he said his name, Casey. Before I could even react, he stepped up, shoved his arm against the door, and wouldn't let me close it. I ran inside, grabbed my phone, bolted to my room, locked the door, and shaking, dialed the cops. He was outside, knocking on the door like non-stop, calling my name real soft. Didn't yell or anything. Each knock made my whole body freeze up, and I covered my ears in both hands till it hurt. The fear had me, a 14-year-old, crying like a little kid, even though I was in my own house. The cops showed up, and the guy was gone, along with some small stuff from the living room. My parents and brother came back soon after, and they totally freaked out when they saw the house and how out of it I looked. After more than 3 days of looking, the cops finally caught Casey, but I couldn't bring myself to face him. I didn't even dare to tell anyone how stupid I was for giving a stranger my address and personal info. It was so embarrassing, thinking I had feelings for a freak for almost a month. Definitely a lesson in being careful that I'll never forget.